welcome to the final part of
AI Tale.
Yes, you heard that right. The story will conclude in this episode. But don't worry, I already have more plans in the pipeline, so make sure to watch until the end to find out what comes next. But for now, we have a finale ahead of ourselves. So if you missed any episodes, the playlist is in the description. And for the last time, let's recap where we currently are. In the last episode, Frisk and Asgore escaped from what I assume is Alphys' lab, where they had to participate in a weird show. It was hosted by a brother and a sister, and I have my doubts that Mettaton was involved, or that he even exists in this world. Frisk and Asgore then met some friends at the Core Plaza and later entered a room full of books, where Frisk uncovered a lot about the religious fanatic cult both of them had been part of in the past. It was an absolute lore fest, I loved it. And finally, they arrived at the shore near New Home where they met Asgore. And, well, he wasn't particularly welcoming. He gazed at Frisk and said,
"You should be ashamed, child. I am not a father to you."
Asriel snapped and yelled at Asgore. "You still won't accept Frisk as your child? Why? Is it because I have feelings for them? Or because Frisk was a human? You have no idea how much we suffered because of your rejection." Asgore's eyes looked like they were glowing. He answered with a calm tone.
"It's not about these two. My loyalty to you as a king of a kingdom that I led through my abilities is what drives me."
What? Asriel is now the king? That came out of nowhere.
"I know that you as the ruler and as Frisk's father have the same responsibilities. I care for Frisk's well-being."
He is Frisk's father too, what is going on? Asriel huffed and slammed his palm against the ground. "Stop lying to yourself. You refuse to see the real reason for all of this. Frisk is my daughter, Asgore. And she should have a mother."
"What do you mean by that?"
"Why didn't you give Frisk to her mother? It would have been a much better choice. We had an agreement that Asriel would never contact Frisk. You lied, and did that to Frisk. Asgore, Frisk wants to be with me, and you rejected that request. I know she's in your heart, and she has a right to be here. She has a right to live." This is a lot to take in. Did Asriel, inherit the status of Frisk's parent when he became king? Maybe that's part of the king's job or something? That would explain why Asgore said that he isn't a father to Frisk anymore. But what is this part about their mother? She was killed. If Asriel is saying that Asgore could have given Frisk to their mom, that must mean that Asgore could have prevented her death. Maybe he was the one who was corrupted by Sans all along. And it seems like both Asriel and Asgore knew that Asriel's relationship with Frisk would cause friction. But it was inevitable that they meet after Frisk had to flee. Wow. So much plot in this paragraph, this is insane. "Asriel, calm down," Frisk said. "Don't do this now. I have a mommy and daddy. I want to see them again." Frisk began to get up, but Asgore put his hand on her back.
"No, Frisk, please don't."
Oh no, Frisk's trauma is kicking in again. Their mind really refuses to remember the tragedy. Asriel took a deep breath. "I never wanted to be the new king, or take on the role as Frisk's father. I'm not ready for either. I can't just brush away my feelings for Frisk, and you know it perfectly well," Asriel said with heartache. He continued talking to Asgore. "You could have prevented all of it. You could have saved Frisk's biological mother. You could have prevented me and Frisk from ever meeting or just accepted the way I felt. You did none of that." Asgore stayed quiet for a while before saying,
"Why are you telling me this? Are you looking for sympathy? Because I can't give it to you."
A great heavy silence fell over the room. Asgore walked over to Asriel, who was still sitting on the couch.
"I am as deeply sorry as I'm angry with myself for not being able to do anything. I have failed my dear daughter. I cannot undo that."
So Frisk really was Asgore's daughter. I guess they just transferred the role of the adopting father. "Please," said Asriel, tears streaming down his face. "Do something. I need you." Asgore approached and embraced his son in a hug. He then looked into Asriel's eyes and said,
I will try, son. I will try my hardest to fix this. To fix us. Whatever we need to do to fix our relationship, I will do it.
Asriel said nothing but sat there silently, tears still streaming down his face. Suddenly he stood up and said, I have a present for Frisk. You're both free to come with me to the surface right now. If you do, I promise I will protect you from the monsters and take care of you as my own child. Oh, this is so emotional again. They are all struggling on their own. But I like that he has a present. That sounds really positive. I didn't expect them to go to the surface now, however. You know what? Let's let the AI off its leash. I'm curious what this journey to the surface will be and don't want to steer it in any direction. I'll continue to generate new text for the next section until the AI completely gets off track. Let's see for how long it can create an acceptable story. Asgore was surprised.
You want to go to the surface now?
Yes, Dad. I need to, replied Asriel as he wiped off his tears.
Well, you're the king now, so I have no power to stop you.
Asgore said with a smile. Asriel held Frisk's hands. Will you accompany me? Frisk nodded. Come on then. Asriel grabbed Frisk's hand and jumped up towards the surface. The walk to the surface was a little tough. The surface was really colder than what Frisk was used to. It seemed that as they were walking, they had to go up and down the mountains a couple of times. It was a bit tough to see the actual surface through the fog and clouds. Frisk felt the fog being pulled into their nose and eyes, making it hard to see. As they kept walking, they could tell they were nearing the surface as it started to get brighter and brighter. As the sun got nearer, they could see the mountains in the distance. As they got closer, Frisk could see the ground in front of them. It was covered in snow. Frisk couldn't believe that they were actually about to walk on the surface of the very world that they lived in. They are already at the Mount Abbott mountain chain, it seems. During winter. It was no longer snowing, though it still was very cold. As they started to walk up the path, Asriel stopped in front of a cave. This is my chamber, said Asriel as he pointed to the cave. Frisk nodded. If you can find a way to live in the surface, I will show you a way, said Asriel as he hugged Frisk. Promise? Asked Frisk with a hopeful look on their face. Promise, Asriel replied. Good, smiled Frisk. Frisk turned around and walked into the cave. Asriel took his free hand and ran through the snow with Frisk following. Frisk didn't get to see much of the cave. It looked dark and gloomy, and the cave only had one little opening. They walked through the tunnel and it looked smaller the closer they got. Once they were in the cave, it was a lot smaller and a lot colder. Frisk was shivering already. Well, the Dreemurrs have a lot of fur to keep them warm. Frisk isn't so lucky. Asriel and Frisk both stood in front of a single small door. Frisk watched as Asriel knocked 3 times on the door. A few seconds later there was a small thud, and a red, half-bear, half-human opened the door. It had big brown eyes and brown fur. If it's half-bear and half-human, then it's not a rat. It was a rat. Okay, fine, it's a rat, whatever you say. Asriel? The rat said as it started to growl. Asriel tried to calm it down. It's me, Frisk, said Asriel as he took Frisk's hand. I guess he meant something like, and this person whose hand I'm holding is named Frisk. The rat was calm after Asriel said Frisk's name and led him and Frisk inside the chamber. The rat was cold, but it didn't attack. As the 3 of them walked into the chamber, they could see a few other rats in there. Frisk looked at the rat, who then gave her a look. Frisk knew that it had noticed her tail. She stood straight up and lifted her tail in front of her. Frisk has a tail? They do have actual monster body parts, that's hilarious. So Frisk the human really died. The rat quickly turned around and started running back into the other chamber. We have to be careful, Frisk heard Asriel yell after the rat. We can't trust rats. It was just one, said Frisk, trying to calm herself. Asgore walked over to them and hugged them.
I'm here,
he said.
So, what did you need?
He asked. Frisk looked at him and they started to talk about their options. There must be a way to walk outside, Asriel exclaimed.
Well, no,
said Asgore. At least the AI didn't forget that Asgore is still here. I almost forgot him.
But we can't stay in here forever.
Frisk nodded. If we go out, we will be in bigger danger, said Asriel. But if we stay in here, we will become sick and die, said Frisk. Asgore looked at them and nodded.
You know you're right,
said Asgore. Asgore opened up a door on the side of the room and ushered them out. Frisk couldn't believe that they were walking in on the face of a planet they didn't even know existed. They were actually outside. I have no idea what the planet statement is supposed to mean. Maybe this feels like a different world or something. Frisk was more afraid at the moment than they were excited. They had always loved their home. It was always there. It was always warm. They could sleep without worrying about the snoozing, and the loud chirping, squeaking sounds were all gone. Now they were out, and they were in the cold, windy and dark. It was cold, dark, and full of other forms of darkness. And the only light they had was the light from Asgore's torch. Frisk still had the torch in their hand, and was holding it near their face. Wait, why did you do that? Asked Frisk. Asgore and Asriel looked at each other.
I can see.
Frisk didn't know how to respond to that, so she just turned her head back to the wall of darkness. Why did Frisk ask that? Lighting the torch does make a lot of sense here. They turned back to each other and Asgore reached his arm around Frisk's shoulder.
It's not dark anymore,
he said. Asriel let Frisk's hand go and the light was there. It was their torchlight. Frisk looked at the torch and she felt a new connection to it. The darkness was gone and she was in Asgore's arms. Asgore and Frisk walked through the dark towards the rock they were leaning on. Frisk didn't know why, but it felt like home. That must be the most pleasant rock ever if it feels like home. Asgore set the torch down and turned to Frisk.
Here, I can carry you,
he said. Asgore had picked up Frisk and was carrying her like a baby. Frisk realized how heavy she felt and let out a scream. Asgore put her down and looked at her. He let go of Frisk's hand and picked her up.
I'm sorry,
he said. It's okay, she said. I know what to do now, Frisk smiled at Asgore. She started walking towards the rock. Why is it so cold? She asked.
The water is so cold,
he said. Frisk took a closer look, and it was the water that was cold. Okay, I have generated 26 pieces of text and I'm running out of letters to label my images. How the heck did the AI manage to tell a decent story for this long? I must have been super lucky there. But I think we should get back to the main plot point now. Despite the cave being cold and dark, Frisk, Asriel and Asgore felt safe. They had each other, and that was all that was necessary. Giving warmth, giving protection. You said you had a present for me. Asriel nodded. Yes, Frisk. It's hidden here. I wanted to give it to you earlier, but I wasn't quite sure about the right timing. Asriel gave Frisk a hug. You have always been so special for me. This is a thank you for being so patient with me. Asriel went behind the rock to get the secret present. He gave it to Frisk. Frisk looked at the gemstone in the box. It looked like a large blue-colored heart. It's beautiful, Asriel. I don't know how you got it, but I love it. Oh, that is a fantastic present. Well done, AI. You keep on impressing me. It took a while. There was a lot to do. Frisk opened the heart. Inside were the names of the fallen in this world, and the names of the children who would soon come into being. Frisk couldn't get over how perfect it was. I can't get over how perfect it is. Each name had a small symbol on it, each unique in shape. Asriel was amazed by this. Even Asriel is amazed by how awesome his own present is. That's cute. This is amazing. Asriel then looked at Frisk, standing at the entrance to the cave. I know, but I'm sorry it couldn't be earlier. I didn't have time. This is not the first of its kind. Sounds like he made several attempts to make sure it's as good as it can be. Frisk smiled. It's fine, I'm not mad. I wanted you to tell me the details. I thought you were telling me about the stones. I don't even know how to express what I'm feeling right now. How could you? Frisk pointed at the stone. It was indeed unique. They hadn't made that. No, Asriel had made it. They were glad he could understand what was going on, and he knew what the stone meant. That meant they were starting to find a place in the real world. Does real world mean the world on the surface? I get the feeling that they want to live there together. That almost sounds like a good ending, but there is one thing we need to address first. Frisk was amazed by the blue heart-shaped gemstone Asriel gave him. He smiled back. I've always dreamt about the two of us living together again, Asriel shyly stated, blushing slightly. Frisk was about to respond when suddenly Sans appeared out of nowhere, ruining the atmosphere.
Hey, finally found ya, Asgore, the skeleton said. So, where are the princesses? I still want the keys.
Asgore was puzzled.
Princesses?
Yeah, you are the king. You have daughters, right?
Asriel is my only child.
Asgore remarked.
And he is the new king.
Sans was looking left and right in confusion. We kinda consider Frisk to be my daughter, Asriel added.
You're like kidding me, right? Frisk is the princess. Do I want the kiss from Frisk?
Sans wondered. I know this is a dangerous setup for an AI fanfic, but I'm feeling bold, I think. Asgore took a step back.
I guess we should see what everyone else thinks,
he muttered. Frisk felt touched by this request, but wanted to ask about their world and Asgore's state. Hey guys, the human boy began. It's like they just instantly swapped their gender so they aren't a princess anymore. That is so clever. If you're asking if I should have a kiss with Asriel, I don't mind if you two want to get a little romantic. He beamed back at the skeleton, who just smiled at him. Sure, Sans, you can have Asgore instead. Frisk handled the situation like an absolute boss. And I love how it says that Sans just smiled. It's his only expression. Oh man, this is pure gold. Sans cracked up.
Me and Asgore, good one.
I like your silly humor, kiddo. He vanished just as quickly as he had appeared. Asgore couldn't follow at all what was going on.
That was interesting, I suppose.
Asriel and Frisk chuckled. It sure was. Then Asriel's smile changed into a more serious expression. Hey, Dad. He hesitated for a moment. I know there are too many problems for our family to reunite, but you saw how much Frisk means to me. I want to live with them and will do so whether you approve or not. Still, he looked into his father's eyes. I will ask you to give your permission.
Yeah, I know.
Asgore breathed.
Well, since you're going to do it, don't be surprised if you find yourself becoming a housewife someday.
When did this turn into a comedy? Brilliant. He finished his sandwich and put the empty plates in the sink. That is one well-equipped cave.
I love you, my boy. I know we are probably never going to see eye to eye on this and may be destined to be adults for the rest of our lives. I just want you to know that I will always be there for you. We are family, and family sticks together.
With that, Asgore kissed his son on the forehead.
We're going to have to get some normal kid toys for the both of you. I know you're mature enough.
Oh no, please don't talk about them having kids now, that's inappropriate.
I know you're mature enough for some serious playtime, but Frisk could benefit from having a simple cardboard spaceship to play with.
Oh my god, that is so in character with Asgore, he has such an innocent mind. He smiled softly.
In the meantime, you can always pretend with me in my workshop.
He grinned.
Maybe we'll make a workshop together. A pit stop after visiting Frisk, I mean. That'd be awesome.
The young demigod chuckled. After so much drama, death and despair, this is just such a perfect lighthearted situation to end on. I know you would probably like this to continue forever, but this is just too perfect. So please, let me wrap things up. Dad, you really know how to always be embarrassing. Asriel sighed with a smile.
That's one of my biggest strengths.
Asgore laughed.
That's what parents are there for once the kids become teenagers.
Frisk started to chuckle, but it quickly turned into an uncontrollable burst of laughter. See, Frisk is already laughing at me. Frisk took a running jump at Asriel, clinging onto his fur, making him spin wildly. Whoa! Frisk held onto their brother tightly until they stopped whirling, ending in a cozy hug. Frisk's big grin was highly infectious, and eventually Asriel and Asgore started laughing as well. The end. I hope you enjoyed this silly little story as much as I did. I definitely had a blast. When I started, I expected the AI to just throw funny nonsense at me, but we actually got a somewhat coherent adventure out of it. And it was 9000% more emotional than I could have ever thought. Believe me, I was just as curious how it would continue as you were, and that surprise made it super fun for me too. InfoKid truly surprised me many times. Let me know in the comments what your favorite part of the story was. My favorite was definitely the cult. With that being said, I don't think there's a need for a theory time here, since I already commented enough throughout the video. However, one cool thing that I noticed is that there was actual foreshadowing about Asriel being the new king. In part 5 he said he wanted to show Frisk his palace, which didn't make sense to me back then, but now it fits perfectly. And shortly after, the male show host said that Asriel's identity is one of many secrets of New Home, which the AI absolutely nailed. Now, I know there are still tons of unanswered questions, like what happened to the skeletons or Chara, or whether Alphys was really held captive. But I think if I try to make the AI answer these questions, it would just generate many more new questions. So I'll leave it to you to come up with theories. Alright, I promised to tell you my future plans. There's two things. First, I want to make one more video for AI Tale where I combine all videos into one, and I read out the entire journey without any comments. And second, if there's enough demand, I may consider trying out a different game that some of you may have heard about, and let the AI do its magic again. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. And that is it. Thank you so much for watching, and I see you next time. Wait, Sans made Frisk's father do horrible things. Asriel is Frisk's father.